In this episode of the Cask Chasers podcast, we're going to look at some of the marketing techniques used by whiskey companies to attract customers and gain that competitive advantage. While we taste, we're going to explain how winning best whiskey in the world redefined Henry McKenna 10 and forced us all to pay a little bit more. Plus, find out which one of the Cask Chasers is a huge bottle chaser. Now, whether you have a screw top or a cork, pour a dram and settle in, this is the Cask Chasers podcast. All right, Cask Chasers, this week we have a great whiskey to share with you, and one that has a very unique kind of trajectory and a story that go along with it, and gone from not quite obscurity, but lesser known to this craze that has kind of happened now, right? And it's the Henry McKenna 10. So let's talk a little bit about that. What's your first impressions?
10 years, to be honest with you. So a lot of your bourbons aren't that old. I mean, you'll see some 12 years and stuff out there, but you don't need bourbon in a barrel for that long to be good.
No.
But
it doesn't make it any worse, though, I'll tell you that.
Well, that's absolutely not. We haven't tasted it yet. I've drank it before, full disclosure.
Sure.
That oak is apparent. And I think that's what I love about it so much, in a good way. Right. Yeah, it takes the vanillins and all that stuff, and it owns it, which
so is
foreshadowing.
I mean, is it fair to say that it gives you what you expect, but at a different level?
Cleaner than a lot of other bourbons, which I think is what people respect.
There's the notes you come to expect from one, but yeah, I guess cleaner is a great way to put it.
Yeah, to me, the McKenna it's what I always think a bourbon should be, if that makes sense.
That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's good. It's like it's no frills. It's not like crazy fancy. It's not finished in a whatever barrel or and any of this kind of thing. It's just bourbon, and it's bourbon. It's how bourbon should be. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. So let's taste it. We always have an extra long pause on that taste because we all nose it first.
The longer the pause, the more we enjoy it too.
Yeah, that's true. But
wow, and that's 50%.
Yeah, that's 50%.
That's good.
The 50% is a little deceiving to me.
So a lot of times, higher ABVs, especially your seasoned whiskey drinkers, the higher ABVs is giving you more flavor.
Okay,
it's no different than paint thinner on a table. The ethanol is stripping away the flavor from the oak. And,
right.
These are heavy bourbon's a heavy char, not the light char. It's up to the alley. You know what I mean. So you're getting a lot more flavor from it, and then it's been in there for 10 years. I'd love to know what's the corn on this.
And the paint thinner is a great analogy because
doesn't make it taste better, but
but we almost we joke about it sometimes when you get that the high ethanol, or it almost you relate it to paint thinner. But what it's actually doing inside is also similar to it, right? You're stripping away at that barrel. Yeah,
and then it's going into that red line and taking those true notes out of it. And I think the longer it's in the barrel, the deeper it's going, and the more we're getting to flavor. I mean, notes, Aaron, on this?
Like I said, it's what a bourbon should be. So you've got that oak, you've got that vanilla, you've got that caramel. It's all just there, and it's not really going to take you on a ride. It's the way that some of your scotches are, even some of your American whiskeys finished in different barrels and that sort of thing. But it's for a 50%, right? 50% ABV.
Yeah.
For 50%, it's like almost no bite to it
great
at
point.
all.
Great point.
Almost no bite to it. And I mean, that is a product of it drawing more flavor out of that barrel than something of a lower ABV, just because that's all it's doing. It's just drawing more and more flavor out. So it's easy to see a higher ABV and go, "Oh, that's really going to kick me in the head," but it doesn't. Always.
Yeah, right, Aaron. For the new whiskey people out there, ABV does that equate to that ethanol bite?
Not always.
High
Does that?
Well, yeah, it's alcohol by volume.
Okay.
Right, which is what it stands for. So your 50 ABV is 100 proof. If it's a newer whiskey, you're going to get, that's a really deep question,
Right. So there's
a lot of aspects to that.
Yeah. So looking at ABV, which is alcohol by volume, in America, what we do is, 50% ABV, you double that number, and that's 100 proof. So what the initial definition of that was when it's 100 proof, it's flammable. So if you set fire to it, it will ignite.
Or how much it'll ignite.
Exactly.
Yeah. With gunpowder, they used to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exactly
how they proofed it.
That's how they proofed it, with gunpowder and lighting it. And if it lit,
could you imagine?
Then it was 100 proof. That was full proof is what they called it at that time. So a 50%, it's basically, and again, just hitting again something else that is 100 proof. That's what your foolproof whiskey that's ready to go would have been, back then as well. And it can be deceiving. So you'll have lower proof, lower ABV whiskeys that are going to give you way more of that ethanol.
Okay.
And it's not there's no one way or the other about it. It's not always that a higher ABV is going to have a lot more of that ethanol, or a lower ABV is going to have a lot more of that ethanol.
There's a lot of aspects to good whiskey that, the reason I said that's a complicated question is with the ethanol and what you're tasting, and the higher the ABV, of course, the higher the alcohol, and you can only bottle at a certain, ABV or percentage, up to rather, but and a minimal, of course,
right,
40% the minimum. But it's the barrel selection, the grain, how it was distilled. When they're looking at this heart of the whiskey, the new whiskey, they're tasting that and they're making sure they're getting the right. A cheaper, not as well-made whiskey may have a higher ethanol. It could be 50%, 100 proof. All you taste is gasoline.
Right.
Then we have a 10-year, award-winning whiskey. And I think it earned every bit of that award.
Oh, absolutely.
That you don't get punched in the face, and you really really get what the distiller was trying to give you.
Right.
So the ethanol did its job. The alcohols did its job, stripping the tannins and the vanillins and things like that. But you're not tasting grain. You're tasting every bit of what you should be tasting. And your new whiskey drinker, they're gonna hear that and think, okay, I'm ready. I'll jump into a bottle of Henry McKenna, and then all they're gonna taste is ethanol.
It's still whiskey.
Yeah, it's still whiskey. So you got to get used to it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not apple juice. It's still whiskey.
They're liars. I still taste it. And
but I will say, in comparison to a lot of other whiskeys, I mean, I was, while Bobby was talking, I was nosing this little, and I got my nose in there, and
You're still fighting?
There's ethanol there, but I mean, it's not like it didn't knock me over.
That's what I mean.
You
really get your nose in there, but you're still fighting for the
right. So like I said, you get on the nose, I get more of the caramel and the vanilla than the oak.
Yeah.
On the palate, I get a lot more of that oak. One thing I like about this one, it's a very straightforward bourbon. It is, I would call it a bourbon's bourbon, and it's got a little bit of almost like a pepper spice, really slight in there,
especially on the finish.
Yeah, on the finish especially, and that and that to me, it just gives you that little bit of something else that makes it unique, makes it interesting.
And I think because of the age, and one of my favorite whiskeys, bourbons rather, is a wheated whiskey, and this is you're not a wheated whiskey, but anyway, I like that wet wood, almost old wood, like you would find a log out in the woods kind of thing going on.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
If I'm getting,
I get that on the finish,
and I think that's the age. I think that's I love it, and
I didn't even think about it.
That's what's unique about it to me. Bourbon specific, vanilla, caramel, right? All of those things. And then you get these nuances of something different. I'm out in the woods and I taste that kind of wetness, and that's that's the old age. I think I love it. We did this once before. I want to do it again. I like our new rating system. I think it's cool.
Would you steal it?
Would you steal this? Well, I did. So the cops are coming.
The plot thickens.
We have to hurry this episode up.
I would snag this right off the shelf. It's worth it.
To
price point.
Well, okay, so price point, that's another fun story. So the award that it won was at the San Francisco, he said confidently, San Francisco World Spirits Competition 2019. Prior to the award that it won, you could find this for $35. So I read the review that came out of it, and I was out and about, and I was like, let me stop in this liquor store, see if they have this. And I did, and I got it for, I think it was like $34.99, something like that. And that was actually this bottle that we're drinking now.
Bottle 4778, if you care, out there in the world.
There you go.
Yeah. Which
is not so this is not the batch that won the award also. But I went in, it was still, like $35. I brought it. I didn't try this until it was fine. I did like almost like a contest on the Cast Chasers Facebook group one night, and I was like, it was like the middle of the day. I was like, hey, everybody's going to pick what Aaron drinks tonight, and I gave choices. I was like, do we want to do a Scotch? Do we want to do an American whiskey? Do we want to do a whiskey from somewhere else? And people kept. I put up a whole bunch of polls throughout the day, and they kept filtering it down, and it wound up being this with all the different qualifiers
Bourbon.
that I was getting. Well, yeah.
Heathens, all yeah.
So it wound up being this, and I hadn't opened it yet, so I was really excited to try it. And let me tell you, it did not disappoint. It did not disappoint. But more back to would you steal it, price point, that sort of thing. I bought it for $35. And then you just flat out couldn't find it anywhere for a while.
What's its price point now?
Right now, the last place I saw it was $48.
Well, I've seen it for $100.
Is that right?
I absolutely
in
have.
A store?
Yeah.
Okay, so I saw it in
ridiculously
a store.
enough.
And I was going to say the particular store I saw it in, a lot of their stuff I see at somewhere between $5 and $15 below what it's going for at other places. And I don't know if that's just they don't have a whole lot of whiskey drinker traffic into the place or whatever the case may be. But I, so that was 48, and I feel like that's got to be on the low end of it.
And and this is an example, or could be eventually, of price gouging. People would call it price gouging.
Sure.
It's supply and demand.
Sure. Absolutely.
It's marketing 101. And I don't think it's a bad thing. To a degree, there's some bottles out there that are ridiculously priced. I mean, 200%. It is what it is, and they manufacture that. Your Pappy's. That's a manufacturer markup. This, I'd pay. It's good. I'd pay $60.
Well, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
If I had never tasted it before, never seen what the price point was, I'd have no problem spending like $60, $70 on this bourbon.
I'm stealing it after that,
and having it as a treat, because it's really good. It's better than some $90, $100, $200 bourbons that I've had in the past. Now, a lot of people, I've heard from our group, from some of the whiskey educators that we know. Russ in particular said to me, he said this is one of his very favorite bourbons.
That's a bold statement.
And I mean,
that's strong.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, a lot of people, if this was their favorite bourbon or one of their favorite bourbons, it's one of those that, I mean, it's freaking delicious. Yeah. We just tried it. And if it has this big thing out of it, even if the price starts jumping from, like 35 to 45 or 35 to 50, and this was your sort of like your favorite thing, your everyday drinker and that sort of, I mean, I'd be pissed off.
Absolutely.
How bittersweet is it though that what's your favorite whiskey, and you tell somebody, then you have to start lying so it doesn't get marked up. What's your favorite whiskey? Like Boone's Farm wine, I think, is my favorite whiskey. You should go buy that. That's and not talk about
Captain Morgan whiskey. That's my favorite.
Because the more you love something, unfortunately.
And I think we could definitely do a whole episode on markup and the discrepancy. When you say $100, you see this for $100 somewhere.
In Maryland,
that's
I saw
amazing.
Me. It's the location. It's what people are willing to spend. It's it's worth what it's worth. And if people buy it, that's marketing, right?
Sure.
If people buy it, that's what they'll put the price tag on.
I don't think it's not $100 whiskey.
Bourbon though.
I don't
American whiskey in America for $100.
Right.
You're reaching.
That's true. That's true. But and that's a great point too.
I mean, the MSRP for Old Rip Van Winkle is
like $200.
No, the MSRP is like $60.
It's
really,
amazing.
I think it's low.
Way lower than it gets sold for.
Well, it's $1,000
Yeah,
a bottle.
right, yeah, exactly.
So $100 whiskey is, they're out there.
And that's
But-
something we're definitely going to get into is the price point of things and how that fluctuates and changes based on the market. But for this episode, this is a perfect segue into the theme of this episode, which is a marketing theme. And you look at the Henry McKenna, what a great case in point for a marketing example, right? Talk about real quick. This whiskey was around for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and it won an award.
So first off, I want to congratulate, and I want you guys out there to hear how amazing our producer Scott is at helping us when we get derailed and off topic
right.
and re-gauging us
And then
in the most professional way.
And I also love the way he humbly says this is a perfect segue to this episode.
That's his way of saying,
designed
guys, you're getting off topic.
To be,
And I love every
let's
bit
get
of
back
it.
on topic.
Thanks,
guys.
boss.
But but
It is a perfect segue.
the award changed the whole landscape of this whiskey.
Mhm.
And
Oh my God, yeah.
so give everyone a snapshot of what it was before, what the award was. And
Well, can we? And I'll let Aaron jump into what the award was. But before the award, this was a lot of people. And if you watch YouTube videos, and there's some, I'm not going to give them a pitch until they give us one. That's right. Holding them hostage.
Be a
There are a
while.
lot of great whiskey YouTube videos and podcasts out there, and just people I've met in general in the whiskey world who have called this their little secret. This really awesome whiskey that should win. You'll hear liquor store guys say the same thing, like, man, I don't know why this thing isn't on the top shelf. And then it wins an award,
Mhm.
and boom.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the actual award it won was best whiskey. Period.
Wow.
In the world,
In the
Scott.
world.
So
In the world.
So 2019 San Francisco World Spirits Competition, it won best whiskey, and that's out of it. It's Scotch. That's everything.
Incredible.
So best whiskey.
Incredible.
Only the second time in history that a bourbon has won best whiskey.
That's like Bobby's Sexiest Man Alive award.
That's right.
Bless America. It's so good that I got a second. I got a little
Good
second
for you.
drop
So
of it,
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, it's one of those whiskey, and just to go back to, you like what you like,
Sure.
like it's so subjective, right? That's the one I want to say. Yeah, it's so based on you, what you like what you like. If you like something that costs $15, God love you, like something that costs $15.
I mean, you're an animal and get with it, but yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but like seriously. So like this, I'd heard of it, but I'd never tried it before the write up came out for it, and then I went and bought it, and I just sat on it until I tried it ultimately, and I loved it. Not much to look at the bottle since we're sort of starting to talk about marketing. The bottle itself, not a whole heck of a lot to look at, but it's aged 10 years, bottled in bond. I think we discussed on a previous episode what that means. So it's bottled in bond, aged 10 years. It's a bourbon, so there's no coloring added to that. And look how beautiful that is.
Oh, it's a gorgeous golden. Yeah.
I
I have an original bottle of this. Speaking of bottles, it's like a clay white old timey bottle, and
the bottle itself is
the bottle itself, like I'm talking corked, not see through, clay manufactured bottle, old school. It just sits on my shelf as decoration. So it just goes to show you that not everybody's a bottle chaser like you are. It can be an ugly bottle and still win.
I mean, like today I'd chase that bottle
Sure.
because, like if I saw a clay bottle today, I'd 100% chase that. Yeah, bottled in bond, which you see very few bottled in bonds for under $45 on, that sort of thing. And we've talked about the rules of bottled in bond and how Bobby and I had an argument that wasn't really an argument on that. But the label, not a real pretty label. It doesn't grab you.
It's not an Angel's Envy bottle.
Right.
It doesn't just
right.
jump out and say, I'm unique and cool. Yeah.
So Heaven Hill Distillery.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very plain bottle. It's very, it's a unique bottle. It's one of these kind of more stubby than tall bottles, which I kind of like, but it's not a whole lot to it. Very easy to sort of pass by on the shelf.
So let me ask you guys a question in the depth of, and since we're, again, I don't know if you guys understand this or not, but this is a marketing episode.
What a segue.
This is universally, in my opinion, loved. I mean, from the groups I'm in and everything like that, it won an award. I think it deserves it.
Sure.
Very rarely, and this is something I appreciate, and some people may disagree, do whiskeys win awards that I don't think they deserve the award. Right?
Okay.
So, you know what I mean? Which is, you look at some other
big statement,
right? It's strong because in the world of awards,
absolutely,
they're rigged and whatnot. Do you think there's a portion of this that, I mean, didn't make Henry McKenna? I'm sure they're doing well, but this as far as marketing goes, what did better for them than winning that major award?
Nothing.
And then not being, and here's what I love about whiskey: the less product you have on your shelf, the more sought after it is.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I can't get it. Who can get it for me?
It's the classic, everybody wants what they can't have.
Oh, it's amazing.
Right.
And I think they've really sourced off that. And yeah, here we are with a bottle of it.
That's right. So to go back to market, I think that the award is basically what catapulted the marketing of that more into the spotlight. So more people than just whiskey drinkers knew about it, So like more people than just your hardcore whiskey drinkers, your people that are really deep into it. Hey, this is sort of a diamond in the rough. It's a $30, $35 bottle. It's fantastic. So we've got that. As far as
you brought up, not to pull you off topic, you brought up a cool little point there, and there's no dye in this,
right? So, and that's literally exactly what I was about to start talking about.
Was it really?
Was dye.
We're mind melding.
I swear to God,
we're meshing, man.
So dye is it serves a lot of purposes. It's mostly going to be they call it caramel
birthday cakes.
Birthday cakes. So they put bright blue dye in whiskey. That's a joke. They don't do that. So the only dye that they really use in whiskey is they call it caramel coloring. It's mostly E150 something or other is what they call. I don't know what that means. Don't ask me.
What are you, not a chemist?
No, that's right. That's right. So E150A is what they call caramel coloring.
Okay.
So, or caramel coloring if you're Bobby. He says I sound pretentious when I say caramel.
It's caramel.
Okay. So that coloring, and there are different rules. Different regions, different areas, different countries are strict about different things. We've talked before about how in Canada you can have a rye whiskey that it doesn't matter how much rye it has in it, but you can still call it a rye whiskey. American whiskey in general, and there's always exceptions to the rule, but the rule for let's talk about the rule for bourbon. If it's bourbon, no dye.
That's real.
That's the rule.
Yeah,
so if
that color is real.
If it's bourbon, no dye. I've read some places that if it's called straight bourbon, it's no dye. If it's called bourbon, it might. But
I don't think you need the dye.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, why would you? But the rule is bourbon, no dye. So if it says bourbon on the label, no dye in it. American whiskey, if it's labeled as straight whiskey, it can have a little bit of dye, but it can't have more than 2.5% of.
I like 3.5 in my whiskey, so that's
right.
That's
right.
You
that's
have
right.
it down.
That's right.
I draw the line at 2.5.
So 2.5% of this caramel, this E1 whatever I forget what it is, E150A, this caramel coloring. In American whiskey. So American whiskey is really strict about, dyes specifically that you can and can't have on it. Whereas you go over to Scotland, very strict on a lot of things over there, but a little more lax on their dye. So their only rule for dye is that it, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically that it can't alter the flavor, basically. So their only thing is that it can't alter the flavor like dramatically or whatever. So they can put dye in everything.
And I'll tell you my opinion, and I want yours too. And Scott's, he's important to all of us. I appreciate and understand dye, and I'm not one of the weirdos. Look, I said it. God, there's the pitchfork.
One of the weirdos.
You son of I understand the fear and the worry and but I've heard people say I can taste it. I don't know that I buy.
Dyes.
Yeah. Do you taste it?
No.
Do you really taste it? No. And I get it though, because you're using used barrels And as good as these coopers are and everything at, picking these staves and everything and manufacturing their barrels and their casks it's hard to get that consistency.
Well, and that's a big reason that they use dye.
Yeah.
In Scotland, that's a huge thing. I mean, you don't want to take, a bottle of scotch from a particular distillery from 6 years ago and then buy something that has literally the same label on it today and have it look like two different things. And that's part of what they do. And I mean, I was listening to an interview the other day.
I thought you were about to say another podcast.
I was listening. I don't even know what a podcast is. I think the interview was on a podcast. But I was listening to an interview the other day, and a lot of distillers kind of struggle with it with using dyes, not using dyes, because everybody started somewhere, and when you're a new distillery, your stuff isn't going to be consistent. You're not going to have this huge cache of, previous barrels and stuff to pull from.
And
right. So you're not going to have all these things. Your very first release is going to look different than, the next year that you have, even if you have to pull from the previous year. So it's this whole thing, but then us, we the consumers, were demanding consistency. So you get this, and I mean this isn't exclusive to the whiskey world. It's beer, everything. You want these like these artisan beers, these artisan whiskeys, these all these things, but you want them to be consistent at the same time.
Well,
it's just not
who's your market, and there's these grandiose whiskey drinkers out there that want purity and everything, but the people that are the new whiskey drinkers, especially, they're looking for new. Glenmorangie 10-year is gorgeous.
Love it.
It's a light whiskey.
Yep.
A new whiskey drinker or a color snob may not grab the bottle because it's very clear,
and that's a shame.
It is a shame, and I think you're selling a product. You have to think of the big picture. I got to put some dye in this thing so that it meets consistently. And to me, your sour mash does the same thing. You're trying to keep a consistency, and that's the picture. That's in every product. Consistency. And for those that don't know what sour mash is, Scott will explain it to you.
Well, if you listen to our last episode, you would know.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's what you do.
Just rewind, okay?
But I think that the interesting thing with dyes, and you were saying about can they taste it or can you taste it? It's almost like a conditioning from the market that we live in with the food industry and everything happens out there. We're scared.
Yeah.
We're scared. And now you're seeing the effects in the whiskey industry where you just hear the term adding dyes, and the perception is that they're adding something that I can
flavorant
taste, it's no longer natural. I've now tainted my whiskey.
Right. Well,
and because of that, a lot of them are getting away from it.
Right. And that's so.
Yeah.
And that's something associated with specifically, you hit the nail right on the head, specifically with the word dye or the word coloring or something.
It sounds like death.
It's well,
depending on your spelling.
But I guess I didn't say this before, but to spin off of that, the specific coloring that they're using, this E150A, and I don't know if there's others, but that's the primary one.
I think there are. I know there are.
It's based, the one that they use the most is basically they're literally just creating caramel out of some sort of carbohydrate,
right?
Whether that's sugar,
it's baseline,
corn syrup,
right?
or something like it's so basic. It's one of the most.
Well, to help us explain,
like
we have national chemist. No, we don't have somebody.
That's a big lie.
In our green room.
I turned around and looked.
Neil deGrasse Tyson will be coming down, and he's not even a chemist. That's all we can get. That's all we could get.
Just say big words; they'll believe it.
Just talk about space.
Yeah.
So like it's that knee jerk reaction to dyes, to colors, to that sort of thing, and that's definitely a big part of it. And there's a good amount of snobbery around it as well. And
we'll see it in this. I mean, comments on this, people. Oh, I hope so.
To your point, though, about it becoming, people don't have to actually taste it; they just hear it. And from a marketing perspective, you could have a completely perfect whiskey sitting there, and if you don't down to the words on the label, down to bottle and bond, down to whatever. If you say one thing that makes them second guess,
Right.
they're standing in
Right.
the aisle, make them second guess that. Their chances are they're going to move on. And
you'd
it's
think the Surgeon General's warning would be enough, but
True.
No,
right.
You know what? Here's a sad
Surgeon
thing.
General warning, but I don't want to die.
No one reads that. Sorry, Surgeon General. I think something it's a bummer too, because we've been taught all our lives not to judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
Right.
But here we are, and I think these poor, defenseless distilleries. People are judging their bottle.
Yep.
People are judging their awards. People are judging their color, and I think that's to a degree it's unfortunate. There's some credibility behind a good award. Bottle shape, bottle look. I mean, there's some boring bottles out there.
I just wanted to briefly touch on bottles.
You got an hour
for those of you that don't know. I am what we lovingly refer to as a bottle chaser.
Yeah.
So
he is.
If I'm unsure about something and it's in a cool bottle, I'm probably going to buy it. So I mean, like just what we have in front of us here and off to the side. I mean, just right in front of us, we've got 10 different bottles, and a couple of them are from the same distillery, so they look pretty similar. But I mean, we've got.
What's your favorite bottle? Tullamore Dew?
Of the ones right in front of me, or of
all? I mean, in the world, I know you love the Tullamore Dew, the syrup bottle,
the
comforting.
the Tullamore Dew
crock.
crock.
Yeah.
I really do like that
bottle chaser.
My favorite bottle. That's a hard one. I like the Angel's Envy bottle.
Yeah,
It's sexy.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of those kind of like rectangular bottles, like not your square bottles, like your Johnny
Saddle,
Walker.
like a saddle.
I do like those, but no, I mean like a Mortlock.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Okay.
And actually, that one in particular, it's got a lot of like angular stuff on it too, and like additional
like
things.
the
Like Macallan M.
Sagamores. I'm thinking Sagamore. Yeah,
Like Macallan M. I have a bottle of that. Yeah.
Macallan, yeah.
The M.
You've got a
Yeah,
bottle
so,
of Macallan M.
I thought I'd bring it down real quick.
That's right.
It's in my
here it is.
bathroom.
That's right. But to your point, the Macallan bottle, specifically, it's not exactly round, and that's a neat thing about it. So like you've got your fairly basic bottles, like a Glenmorangie bottle. I think is pretty basic. What do we have over here?
the Jamesons. Yeah.
Jameson.
I like the old Pulteney
Okay.
bottle. I like that
Okay.
bulb, the bulbous. I think that looks cool.
I
in the
do
neck.
like
Yeah.
I like up in the neck when you get a little bit of a bulb. I think that Amrit you had a little bit of a bulb
Yes.
that comes out at the top of it. All of those.
Are we being caught up in the marketing aspect of
Hop
bottle
on,
shapes?
hop
this
on the
is
train,
it.
brother.
This is
hop
what
on the
it-
train.
Look, these are
They got us.
These are the types of things that are happening in the aisle in the moment
Yeah.
at split second decisions. But these are the things that go through your mind, right? And when you think about it, that's so important to some of these companies. You see an Angel's Envy sitting on the shelf, man, that stands out
just
from
looks
that
good.
stands out from some of these bottles, like you said, the Glenmorangie that looks kind of like a standard bottle.
Do you know where they get me? Speaking of how they
Yeah.
placement, I'm a end cap
Oh
shopper.
yeah.
I
Sure.
am.
Yeah.
And not even on sale. If I walk in and I see a display, so I can't help it, regardless of what it is.
Mhm.
I mean, if it's something that I know I don't like, I won't grab it. But a lot of times, if I see a good end cap,
Yeah.
especially your local. So I'm in Virginia, West Virginia. I did a whitewater rafting trip, which is on my other podcast, Whitewater Rafting for Beginners.
Raft chasers.
Raft chasers. I was in West Virginia, and no, it wasn't West Virginia. It was PA going into West Virginia. So the joke's ruined. But anyway, I was somewhere, and I saw this really cool.
Does PA go into West Virginia?
Bobby
Yeah.
got kidnapped.
Okay.
Is
It
basically
does.
what he's telling us.
Anyway, I see this really cool end cap for Redemption, which is from, I should know, and I don't know. Do you have a bottle?
I do.
Oh, there it is. It was very cool. Wherever I was, whatever state the aliens brought me. And it was such a cool end cap that I've got a bottle of it.
It's great
And
stuff.
it's strictly, and I hadn't had it before.
And that's one that for those types of trips, and I think I had said something in the group about
Where's it from?
being around a campfire.
Iowa.
Indiana.
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 Well, they made their way out wherever I was.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them.
There's so much content in that story I just told.
And now we've got 11 bottles sitting right in front of us.
I got my point across. I want whitewater rafting.
You got it. You got it.
So you went whitewater rafting. You started in Pennsylvania, you ended in Indiana.
You plugged the podcast. We get it.
Yeah,
Good job. But scanning the aisle, some of these bottles they just blend together. Some of them stand out. Let me ask you another question. We have a bottle of the famous grouse sitting in front of us. Screw top.
Wow. Okay. Here we go. So screw top, especially in the wine world.
We're going to have an entire episode about the way Bobby says especially.
I know how it's especially.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Here's the problem.
He says espresso too.
Let me touch. Yeah. I'm from Texas and I lost my accent, military and all that noise, just traveling. And I live in the East Coast now. So when you have a Texas accent and you say especially, that's a especially good looking bottle of whiskey there. It's cute and adorable. When you don't have an accent, you say especially, you sound like an idiot. If you have dear friend, first off, if you have very close friends that you love more than anything, they're the ones that are going to call you out on it constantly and really bring your self-esteem to a level. Here's the thing. In this entire podcast, I'm going to say it wrong. So there should be a segment.
That's right.
We're starting a dictionary.
That's right.
See, it's going to be on the shelves in a year.
Bobby says it. How Bobby says it.
Yeah.
Screw tops, especially. Is that good for you?
It's good.
Freaking pretentious.
No, it's not good. You still
English majors.
Just go ahead.
Screw tops.
Are better for the whiskey. Boom. Said it.
Really?
Yeah. Now there are synthetic corks coming out and things like that are changing in the sealing. Nothing seals better. Seals? Is that good for you?
It's a word.
Nothing.
When you say
nothing
things that are
walrus or
words,
seals better than. I'm so scared and paranoid now. Seals better. Nothing seals better than a screw top.
Wow.
It doesn't. And, I've heard, here's the argument I've heard, a little oxidation, never judge. And I said this to Aaron the other day and he called me, he hated it, but it's the truth. You never judge a bottle of whiskey by its neck pour.
Okay.
You ever buy a new bottle of whiskey and you pour it right from the front and it doesn't taste like it tasted when you had it at a friend's house. It missed something. The oxidation hasn't happened. There's something to a cork that a little air gets in there and opens up a half a bottle of whiskey.
Even a synthetic?
Yeah.
Even a
it's
synthetic.
Just the way it seals.
Okay. It just is what
Not
it
the
is.
porous nature.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't get that from a screw top. And wines, a lot of good wine, there's an argument in the world of wine where a screw top is the better way to go. It's just not as sexy.
Okay.
And boom, there's more marketing.
Yeah.
Because about this, here we go. I don't know if you can pick this out. Ready?
Absolutely.
Something about that is
really
just amazing. Where versus, which is the actual sound.
That was not a screw top. That was just Bobby making Donald Duck sounds.
Was it Donald Duck?
I don't know what it was. So yeah, more to your point, the screw tops, I couldn't care less.
Okay.
Personally. I get nervous when I have a natural cork.
Okay.
Because they
break up.
They break up. They
get
can
fungus.
affect the thing. Depending on, they can affect the thing. Is the sentence that came out of my mouth.
Well,
but no. So yeah, they can break up. There are liquor stores. There are all sorts of things that they don't know how to store whiskey. So like wine, you store it on its side. You want to keep it in contact with the cork while you're storing it. But whiskey, you absolutely don't want to do that because the alcohol content is going to break down the natural cork. So natural cork makes me nervous. It's going to get
as if he keeps a bottle longer,
right,
for it to experience any of that.
But like it can break down. It can fall into the whiskey. You can have all these issues. I'm a big fan of the action and the sound of pulling a cork from a bottle. So I'm team synthetic cork, I guess I would say.
But then the synthetic corks have the wooden.
Right, they've got wood caps.
Yeah,
on
so they
top
still have that.
Right, they still make you feel cool. So like I just literally just for aesthetics and I will say because I feel like they do let a little more air in than a screw top, which is going to give you a really tight seal there. So I like when my whiskey has a little bit of air getting to it and that breeze, sort of thing. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that at the end of the day, I have no problem with a screw top. If I was designing a whiskey bottle, I would probably do synthetic cork.
That's interesting.
There you go. Because natural cork makes me nervous, but I love that feeling you get in the sound when you pull it off.
It all plays a part.
Yeah.
I want to get one topic, and we're getting to the end of the episode here,
Yes,
but I want to get one topic in is deceptive marketing, because we touched on it. And I know maybe this is a bigger topic than we can fit in the end of it.
Yeah, that's a whole nother.
But just real quick, what is one of the most common deceptive practices that you see on a label?
Wow, that's a good one. So there are federal rules and laws and that say something can be called something, and then there are things that we make up that aren't necessarily a thing. I'm careful with I'm careful with small batch.
Okay,
that's one.
Yeah.
And small batch can mean something.
Okay,
but small batch can also mean nothing.
Gotcha.
It can just mean they just collected whiskey from a few and just put it in a bottle. And sometimes it means the master distiller picked a few and put it in a bottle. Master distiller. That's one of them. You know, there's no school or anything. You're just a good distiller or you're not a good distiller. And that's not me talking. There are distillers out there that say, you know, I think it was Jim McEwen on that great Amazon. I think it's Amazon Prime or maybe Netflix.
I still haven't watched it.
It's beautiful. They basically make fun of the term master distiller. So there's a lot of verbiage on whiskey bottles that you got to be careful for. And I wish I had a list of them. You kind of called me out on that.
I just wanted to touch on
the spot.
We're going to come back to. We're definitely going to come back to that topic. I just wanted to touch on what came to mind first. And
you know what? More than that, the stories behind some whiskey, and and we'll leave that as a cliffhanger. But there's some great whiskeys out there that have bought the story behind their name.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I really have nothing to add to that. I mean, just look at the words on your whiskey bottle. If it's something that sounds fancy, look into it. Extra single malt, extra lightning water, whatever. If it's something that sounds, if you see words on the label that you're not sure you understand what it means, look it up. Yeah. It might really not mean a lot.
Yeah. Well, there you have it.
Don't judge a bottle by its cover.
Sound advice from Mr. Bobby Bird. Well, that does it for this episode of the Cask Chasers podcast. Be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Cask Chasers, and online at www.caskchasers.org. As always, you can like, subscribe, and rate us right there in your podcast player. So we'll see you next week. And remember, it's not about finding that perfect dram. It's all in the chase.